Yes, sir.
Welcome to another edition of African Americans Ain't African Radio, the talk show that proves without a shadow of a doubt that the so-called African American didn't find his way, the so-called African American didn't find his way to America stuffed in the trunk of a ship. I'm your host, Buck Wylam, and tonight you are in for a very special treat. Tonight, joining us is going to be Dr. Mumbo Jumbo, and Dr. Mumbo Jumbo is going to explain to us the 7 steps how to avoid emotional genocide. If we look around the African American community today, we see all kind of death and destruction going on, and most of that starts with, as Dr. Bobby Wright once says, menticide. And the definition of menticide is destroying a person or a group by destroying their mental capabilities. But tonight we're going to take a different look at that. We're going to go through emotional genocide and how that affects the community. Joining me as always is my co-host Rick Moon. Rick, how was your weekend, brother?
Oh, my weekend was pretty good, and hello to all the good people out there listening to us tonight. Hopefully this is going to be a good show tonight. I expect we're going to get a real treat tonight because I'm just like everybody else out there. I don't know what the mumbo jumbo is about, but I'm getting ready to find out shortly. Have a good day and enjoy the show.
Okay. Thanks, Rick. I've heard of Dr. Mumbo Jumbo a little while ago and was trying to get him on for a minute, but when starting this radio program, you're just running around and doing so many things. So if you want to call in, please give us a call and join the conversation at area code 256-849-2227. You can also reach us at our website at africanamericansaintafrican.org, and we're also on Facebook in the African American Ain't African chat room. Dr. Mumbo Jumbo, how are you today, brother?
I'm doing great, brother. Honored and humbled to be a part of your show, brother.
Well, thank you for joining us. And, as I talked to you before, you got a lot of information you want to share. And on African Americans Ain't African, that's what we're trying to do, trying to give the people some information that can be beneficial to them, their communities, and themselves. So thank you for joining us, and we're very happy to have you. Now,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes. Now, last week, you was trying to get on last week when we were talking about Christianity. So since you couldn't get on, I want to go ahead and open up this show with, as coming from an indigenous man of America, what is your take on Christianity? What is your take on Christianity, and what is it doing to the community as you see it, coming from that paradigm?
Okay, yeah, I really tried to get in last week, but I had some problems with my technology. And the main thing I wanted to talk about in the discussion was Christianity and so-called African Americans, or whatever you want to call them, is that I wanted to separate Christianity from the congregation and from the church, from the actual congregation of people. Because I grew up in the church, congregation of church, church. My father was a pastor, my grandfather was a preacher, my grandmother was a missionary. After that, my other grandfather was a medicine man, Chickasaw medicine man. And so I have this, in my family, I have this history of people being in the church or shamans, medicine men, not really shamans, but medicine people for the tribes and stuff like that. So what I learned in the church, not Christianity, as far as Christianity, the religion and the doctrine and stuff like that, that's somebody else's mumbo jumbo. That either from, I don't care if you want to say they're from Europe, Middle East, or from Africa, wherever, that mythology, that stuff like that didn't come out of the Americas. That was brought to the Americas, and it's not a good, healthy fit, in my opinion, for the people of Americas or the habitats of Americas. But that being said, I won't disrespect the congregations and the people, because those are my ancestors, and those are the people I grew up with. So I always try to make a distinction between the doctrine, I'll even go as far as to make a distinction between the Bible and the people. And I grew up Church of God in Christ. for all the way back to when in 1906 when they first formed the Church of God in Christ. And Church of God in Christ was from straight up indigenous people. Most of them are in that church are Chickasaw/Choctaw. And they brought, it's like Chief said a few shows back, they brought most of their tribal customs into the church. So from that church congregation and growing up in that collective or that environment, I personally got a lot of benefits. One of the most primary, when I was listening to the show, I was thinking about what's the number one benefit I got from growing up in that environment, is I learned about Holy Ghost dancing. I learned the power of Holy Ghost dancing when you get a community of people dancing in that vibe, in that emotion, of something greater than the self, even though it might have been misplaced on some faraway, land or something in the sky. The vibration and the power collectively, and the rhythmic and the music sensation, that was something real and powerful that I learned and I experienced. And that basically taught me what it was like to feel the quote-unquote anointing or the power of the Spirit and things like that. And that really had nothing to do with the Bible, because Church of God in Christ were not necessarily hermeneutic studies and scholars and stuff like that. I mean, they knew the Bible, but they weren't really going back to the Greek or the Aramaic trying to do that. So the other thing I learned from church was the community. There was a community of elders, there were church mothers, there were deacons, and it was really based after a tribal model. So I learned about physically building the church with the men, and while the women did other things. So I sort of learned how a healthy culture sort of functioned. There was also something we had called testimony service. This is Kojic. I don't know about other religions, but in that service, everybody sang a song, everybody told a story. So in that environment, I learned the value of storytelling and things like that. I learned about visiting prisons, about feeding people hungry, and stuff like that. So I learned what it was like to be raised collectively. But I also learned what a hustle was and what a hustler was, because there was a lot of people that came through that were strictly on some okey-doke, hustle people for the money, take advantage of them, take advantage of women and stuff like that, Fortunately, I had a good dad, and he was like 24/7 out trying to help other people. But also, as I got further into it, as I started looking at the Bible for myself, what I learned from the church, I learned a lot of stuff that was wrong, that the doctrine taught, and that inspired in me a desire to find out what was right for me, what was the correct, quote-unquote, mumbo-jumbo, for my spirit and for the direction I wanted to go. So I just wanted to, and the other thing I too see, even when I talk to people now about Christianity, I'm trying to, expose people to a different thing. What I've learned is that what keeps most people in church, especially our females, is the emotional experience. They feel that authentic emotional thing. And most of them aren't really into the scriptures that deep anywhere, the doctrine and stuff like that, but they feel that emotional thing that resonates in us because of our spirituality, our natural soul power, and that's what they hate getting rid of. They're afraid to leave that because we don't have a healthy place or an alternative that's attached to nature for that emotional place to live in and exist, and that's part of what we need to recreate. That's basically my mumbo-jumbo on that. But as far as the Christian mumbo-jumbo, their stuff, I started writing a few years ago, maybe a few decades ago. I used to study the Bible, stuff like that. And once I learned it was just a bunch of dudes, a bunch of guys that wrote the scriptures and stuff, I said, man, I can write my own creation mythology. So I started writing my own creation mythology. Because I figured they're not smarter, I got hands and a mind and eyeballs just like they got, so if they can create a mythology and say it's from somebody, so can I.
Right. Why do you think in our communities, being that you're saying we do a lot of dancing, being that you're saying we have all this spiritual energy, the church, as what I'm seeing of it, is supposed to harness that energy and send that energy out to the community to do what the church and all the other churches connected want that environment to be like? Why do you think all that emotional energy and that spiritual energy that's built up in our community, why do you think that energy is just allowed to dissipate, allowed to be nothing, allowed to be wasted, allowed for other people to come over and use it probably to help build up what they're doing? Where is the disconnect? Why isn't that happening with us?
Well, have you ever read any of Christopher Columbus's diaries?
No.
You know, one of the first things that Christopher Columbus said when he came and saw the people, well, I don't know, it was the Bahamas, West Indies, somewhere, and he met the natives. He said, these people are very nice, but they're also very naive. He said they are perfectly suited for Christianity. And that's in his diary. He said we can put this, our Christian mumbo jumbo, our Christian doctrine on them, and then we can take all this kindness, all this emotional stuff like that, and we can exploit them, and we can basically maximize and keep them in line. Now, why aren't we using that energy to? The reason we're not using that energy to our benefit, by and large, is because that the church is like, the Christianity is like, sort of like a harness, or it's like a cloak. It's like a cloak. So it's like a garment we put on our soul, but it doesn't really fit. And that garment constricts us in ways that would be healthy for us. And the primary way that Christianity restricts us is because we're soul people, we're nature's people, we're inseparable from our habitats, you know, before they came. And have you ever heard anybody in church have a sermon talking about taking care of the habitat on Earth?
Area code 256-849-2227. We're joined by Dr. Mumbo Jumbo. We ain't even been in the show 15 minutes and you dropping it like that. Dr. Mumbo Jumbo, being disconnected from our habitat. Could you expound on that, please? When you say habitat, what is a habitat and what is our relationship to it?
Well, we are a habitat. We are the habitat. And we're not, see, we've taken up a lot of colonial thinking. We've taken up a lot of colonial things. Pre-colonial thinking, that's why I invited everybody to bring some fire. I had some music that I wanted to play, but technology, we couldn't do it. So I was inviting people to, if they had some candles or fire or sacred plants, you know, your tama, your kinetic tobacco, stuff like that, to burn it, so that I want you to have this sort of be like we're sitting around a fire telling some stories so that we could feel that emotional energy. Because what I really like to do is I like to tell stories, because I'm a storyteller.
Gee.
You know, I'm a storyteller.
Doc, let me say this while you talking. Everybody, take the next minute, run and go get your candle, incense, whatever you gonna burn. Everybody, run and go get theirs right now. Go ahead, Doc. We listening. I got mine.
Oh, that's perfect. So if you got theirs, but you know, if you do that, once everybody get their fire burning, I'm gonna actually take a little slight diversion, and I'm gonna tell y'all a story. And I think after I tell y'all a story, then when we get back into the other questions, everything's going to be about how to survive. As a matter of fact, it's survive genocide. You can't avoid genocide, Jerry. That's what you said. We can't avoid the emotional genocide, but we can survive it.
Okay.
But I'm going to tell this story when everybody get back from burning their fire and they get this going. And then after I tell this story, little short story, then I think that everything will make more sense.
Okay, well, since everybody's getting their fire, do we have any comments or questions that one of our callers may want to add?
Well, cool then. If there's no questions, I'm gonna give you a little bit of definition, a little background on what mumbo jumbo is. All right. I chose mumbo jumbo because it's a multi-dimensional word. It actually, I borrowed it from. It's actually a Mandinka word. And it was a Mandinka call to the ancestors, and it was a call they used to dance with their ancestors. And I'm not African, I'm not Mandinka, but since a lot of my language has been lost. A lot of my vocabulary has been lost. And because of the meaning that that word has in English, I thought it was a really good word. So in my stories, mumbo jumbo is the stuff is made of. So mumbo jumbo is the movement or the intention that turns possibilities into reality. And so mumbo jumbo is also what people believe and what they say they believe and what they try to get you to believe. And so most of these belief plantations that we're stuck on, we're stuck on a lot of these belief plantations. We're no longer on the tobacco, the rubber, the sugar, the rice plantations. Now we're on these belief plantations of different religions, different political things, different economic systems, and things like that. And all these belief plantations are just mumbo jumbo that somebody created and put on us like a harness. And the reason I like to put everything at the level of mumbo jumbo, because sometimes we act like everything is so insurmountable to us. And it's like there's this mystical force, like the weight of this, and it can't be changed. But all it really is mumbo jumbo. And just like other people created it, we can create our own that's in our own frequency and vibration, and we can use it for ourselves and for our habitat.
Doc, let me interject right here. So basically what you're saying is we can, that energy that we talked about earlier being dissipated in the community, basically what you're saying, this is a way for us to harness that by making up something that would work for us. Is that what you're saying?
You know what? I got one of my T-shirts says, a people will never be greater than their stories. Our issue is we're telling everybody else's story. That's one of the reasons that as a people we're not doing well. We have the Christmas story. We have the story of the Africans coming over. We have Columbus' story. We have all these other stories, but we don't really have our stories. And emotionally, a people can't survive without stories because basically we are stories.
Yes, sir.
We are stories. And so that's why story...
Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, so I guess there is a method to this mumbo jumbo, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
Right.
Dr. Mumbo Jumbo, you gonna give us one of those stories right quick?
Okay, here we go. Y'all ready for the story? This is just a little brief snippet of the Naturian story. So the reason I like using stories is sometimes when you're trying to communicate emotional truth, historical facts get in the way. Because historical facts makes your intellectual mind try to validate stuff like that. But if I'm telling you right now this is a made-up fictional story, then you can just sit back and emotionally feel the story, and you don't have to debate, did that really happen? Did that really happen? Because I'm telling you it's a story right now that I made up. Okay?
Check.
Mm-hmm. So everybody get your fire going and sit back. Just imagine this in the evening. You know, the moon's up. We're sitting around. It's warm. We've been saying our songs. And I'm getting an understanding to tell you a story. This is the Naturian story. Here we go. A long time ago, Mama Earth created an island that she called Naturia. By that time, she was an expert at creating her water creations. That means she was really good at creating all of her water creations. She was still working out some of the kinks with her land creation. She had just really started her land creations because her water creations are a lot older than her land creations. So that's why she decided to create the island of Naturia, because she wanted to try out some different ideas. Mama Earth had many birthing gardens in Naturia, but she had a special purpose for one of them in particular. She planned on creating a group of man people she was going to call Naturians. And she was going to give them an extra strong dose of emotional power. All of the existing man people that she had already created didn't seem to be too aware of her different moods and desires the way the other animal and plant people were. So she had already created some people, but they didn't really seem to be responsive to her frequency changes and her moods and her vibrations the way the animals and plant people were. So, but by then, Mama Earth was no longer a naive planet. she had already learned a bunch of lessons about making new creations. And so she was going to do that in a small batch until she see how they interacted with the rest of her habitat. And there's other stories about how she, created ancient sun trees and things like that, and when she was trying to create land above the waters and stuff like that. And so she had learned through experience that, just because you have an idea to create something doesn't mean what you're going to want what you created after you see how it interacts in the environment. So at first, the Naturians she created, they thrived. Now, don't get me wrong, they had their growing pains adjusting because they were the newbies in the habitat, and they had to learn how to get along with everybody. But in general, everyone, all the other plant and animal peoples were very happy that the Naturians came into existence because they, above all other people, were able to interact with Mama Earth's emotions in a way that made life better for everybody. For example, just like there's the jet stream or there's ocean currents, Mama Earth also has emotional streams or emotional currents. And so the Naturians were able to comprehend her coming emotional changes or storms, and then they were able to help all the other land creations make the appropriate emotional adjustments so that they could sort of, survive and go through her emotional changes with ease, or a lot easier. And because of that, the Naturians grew to be a very strong people, well respected in the habitat. And that was because each of them had a personal relationship with Mama Earth. They each had a personal relationship with Mama Earth. And actually, for example, when her emotional frequencies changed, they all moved in response together effortlessly, like in harmony as a collective. Just kind of like how you see a flock of geese knows when the seasons change because the daylight change. They all know when it's time to get up and fly south together. Or schools of fish. They all know when it's time to go to a different part of the ocean where warmer water. They just know that they move as a collective. They don't have political things and big debates, but because they're all tuned in personally to Mama Earth's emotions, they move as one. And so Mama Earth, the Naturians were doing such a good job, the Mama Earth decided to, develop some other types of man people. And also by then, some other man people from the other side of the ocean had found a land bridge, and they walked into Naturia from the northwest. Now, of course, the Naturians, since they were so emotionally sensitive, they could sense these other people, and their curiosity began to impact their effectiveness with as the Naturian planet keepers. They actually start getting distracted. They start seeing other people do things that didn't have their responsibility. So one day, some man people called colonites came from the other side of the planet to Naturia with some very strange mumbo jumbo and a penchant for physical violence that was new to Naturia. I mean, the Naturians had fights and scuffles and even wars, but it wasn't to the level that these colonites had. The colonites, on the other hand, were amazed at how peaceful and how emotionally powerful the Naturians were. They even marveled at how these people seemed to even be able to control the weather and the elements. They could talk with the elements and things like that. They were just amazed at the power that these people had, to the extent that they feared the great emotional power of the Naturians. But they also noticed that the Naturians were really sort of naive and not experienced with extreme force and physical violence. And so they discovered that if they used extreme force and were just merciless with the Naturians, that their strong emotions would leave love and they would turn into fear. And they realized that once they got the Naturians on that fear vibration, that they basically destroyed themselves. They just started destroying themselves. And then once they made them afraid, it was easier to bring their tools of religion, politics, and economics to basically just conquer the whole habitat. So, eventually the colonists separated the Naturians and constantly relocated them from the earth of their birth once they discovered that the Naturians derived great power from their natural habitat. They also set about to cut down the trees, many trees as possible, realizing that once they discovered and realized that the Naturians were forest people, and forest people without a forest were much easier to control. They had no idea that the tree people were the first of the air creations to befriend the Naturians. So for the next few centuries, the vast majority of the Naturians were killed by violence, disease, or enslaved. Now, the Naturian ancestors did whatever they could to protect future generations, but they knew unless Mama Earth intervened, the Naturians would go extinct. When they appealed to her, she told them if they could just sustain enough of their seed until the planetary alignment of her system, her frequencies would raise high enough for those with emotional power would be able to align with nature, and they would be able to offset the damage caused by the mumbo-jumbo of physical force and greed. So while waiting for the planetary alignment, most of the Naturians had adopted these new created cultural identities that other people had made for them. And they started believing the propaganda even more than their own living ancestors. Finally, the planetary alignment of Big Daddy Sunshine's children happened just as she promised, and it was true. One by one, the Naturian descendants began emotionally reconnecting with Mama Earth, but it was very slow and very difficult. Their emotional desires led them to try all different types of mumbo-jumbo. They were just experimenting. Some of them were good, but most of them were just different versions of mumbo-jumbo that the liar kings had created. But as the months turned into years after the planetary alignment, the Naturian descendants became better and better at distinguishing their ancestral mumbo-jumbo from other people. Their storytellers and dreamers began to hear from the ancestors. They began to tell stories, sing songs, and make art that showed a people how to come back to their heritage as the Naturian planet keepers of the island of Naturia. Now, I suspect that most of the people on this call, even though this is a made-up story, most of the people on this call have a very similar story.
Oh yeah, that's a great story there, Dr. Mumbo Jumbo. And although maybe the characters are different, the stories are very true. And I could, as you was talking, it seemed like I kind of knew what you was going to say after that because it showed a story that I've seen on numerous occasions. Thank you for that story.
You're welcome, brother. You're welcome, brother. So that's kind of where we are. And so now we're at the place where, as Terry often says, we are sort of in a crisis situation. We are in a crisis situation. Now, everybody knows, I'm talking about Mumbo Jumbo. Everybody knows what Kerry's Mumbo Jumbo is, what Buck's Mumbo Jumbo is. What's Buck's Mumbo Jumbo? His Mumbo Jumbo is African Americans ain't African. That's his Mumbo Jumbo. That's his story. And I'm telling you, but that Mumbo Jumbo, joined with my Mumbo Jumbo, joined with Chief's Mumbo Jumbo, joined with all these other people's Mumbo Jumbo, that is going to create a big story at some point that people can attach to. And if you notice, a lot of these stories, at least right now in this small community, it's a lot of brothers telling stories. But we're super emotional people, and our females are even more emotionally powerful than the males. But one thing that us brothers have is that we can compartmentalize our emotions better. So what we have to do, we have to create this safe space, brothers, so that the females will feel safe enough to redirect their emotions from mansions in the sky, from, material things, from Jimmy Choo shoes in the closet. I mean, you can have nice stuff. I ain't against all that stuff if you want stuff. I'm just saying, so that they can take their emotional energy, all the places they placed it, and put it back in the natural habitat. But they can't do that, brothers, until we create a safe place. That means that we actually have to get back in nature and create a safe place that they will feel comfortable coming into. Because the issue that a lot of us males have is that we want to fix things. But the wisdom is we need something to be healed. We can't fix brothers. Brothers can't fix things that women need to heal.
Could you elaborate? Could you elaborate on that, Doc, please?
It's like if you have a broken bone. You can go to a doctor and he can set the bone. He fixed it, right? But he can't heal the bone. That bone still has to be healed by Mama Earth nature and just natural human healing and stuff like that. So we can, as males, identify things and we can fix things, but we're under this huge patriarchal paradigm. And because of our competitive nature and somewhat because of our combative nature, sometimes we go in too aggressively and we want to hit people over the head that are suffering and that are just as afraid as we used to be and maybe still are. That's like when I talk about those people that are still on those belief plantations, whether it's religious, economic, or something like that. If you imagine back when we were enslaved, there were like cotton plantations and tobacco plantations and stuff like that. Suppose you actually escaped from a plantation, and then you saw somebody on a tobacco plantation. If you were going to help them escape, you wouldn't go to them and beat them over the head and say, "Why are you still here? Why are you still here? Why don't you feel like me? Why don't you feel like me?" That's not how you get people out of bondage. So all these people that are caught in all these other divisive mumbo jumbo, and I'm basically saying, if an indigenous mumbo jumbo isn't focused on restoring the habitats of the Americas, then I would say keep looking for a different mumbo jumbo.
256-849-2227. African Americans Ain't African Radio presents Dr. Mumbo Jumbo. Doctor, the story you told about Mama Earth and Naturia, as you were telling the story, I was comparing it to the stories that we've been taught to in the church. And as you're telling the story about Mama, it's like you say, that's something that we all can focus on because we all know Mama, or we all know somebody who filled that Mama role. It is with these stories that are opposite of what you told, because I know all listeners felt that. How are we going to turn that energy back towards us, that emotional energy? You saying we have to create safe spaces. How do brothers do that? How do we go about doing that?
Well, the good news is that we are, from the people I've seen on the planet in my lifetime, we are the most powerful emotional people, the most emotional group of people of any other group of people I've seen on the planet. As far as having emotional power, emotional charisma, able to produce emotions that affect other people, that soothe them or move them. I'm not saying that when you look at, I'm not saying that we're going to build the biggest battleships. We might not build a nuclear weapon. We might not build the most efficient space shuttle or something like that. But when it comes to emotional power and emoting that, we are more equipped than any other group of people on the planet. Even more so, I'm going to say even more so than our brothers from so-called Africa. For instance, there was no such thing as gospel music in Africa, right? You know, that flavor and that soul and that emotional stuff like that, that happened with the indigenous people of America. That injection of soul, you know, and all of the stuff that you see other cultures imitating.
Right.
You know, they imitate our energy. They imitate our energy. As a matter of fact, they desire it. They have to have it.
Right.
And they value it. They respect it way more than we do. That's why they're always mimicking our culture. We cannot have a slang word for more than 3 weeks before they adopt it. We just can't. We can't do it.
Dr. Mumbo Jumbo, remember a few months ago they had this Korean dude trying to be like MC Hammer? Remember that? You remember that?
Well, you remember that? I remember Elvis. Not remember, but I've seen Elvis Presley trying to be like Chuck Berry.
Right, and it's whack. Right. And it's whack. It's whack.
But you know what? That's the thing. And even if you look at all of these lip implants, all of these breast implants, and stuff like that, who are these white women trying to look like?
Yes.
Right.
They're trying to look like our females. They want to be us, And somehow they've convinced us that we should want to be like them. But let me say one more thing about that personal relationship. Now, this is the difference between Christianity and indigenous spirituality. In indigenous spirituality, everyone has a personal relationship with Mama Earth. In Christianity, everybody has a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That is a difference, because Jesus Christ in Christianity is focused on this place. In modern Christianity, I ain't going to even say the Bible, I'm going to say Christian religion. Just Jesus Christ is focused on the heaven, someplace in the by and by. Christianity, that personal relationship, isn't concerned about the earth. The earth is just something you've been given dominion on to use up and to exploit.
You're right.
Which is the exact opposite. So we've attached our emotional energy to something in the by and by as opposed to attaching it into something. And that's the other problem we have. It's like have you ever seen like a live wire that's jumping and it's just sparking everywhere? You know,
Yes.
It's got a lot of electrical charge and it's not hooked up.
Yes.
You know, it's just like writhing on the ground like a snake.
Right.
That's our soul energy. It's wanting to get connected to the right place. It wants to get reconnected back into nature, like it's supposed to be. And we can try a lot of things. That's why collectively, I looked at that video that was it was a really good video that brother posted on the page about, you know, his 5 steps, you know, like the economic thing, building the platform and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, the political and stuff like that.
Right.
My perspective is that's great. But I also read that he put that out. He's been saying that message for 20 years, right?
About 30 years.
30 years.
Claude Anderson. Claude Anderson.
But you know why that hasn't worked? With us, you have to start with the emotion first. The reason that our dollars don't stay in our community is because we are emotionally disconnected and disenfranchised. And so we're trying to do we're coming up with all these political solutions, all of these, to some extent, even some of our desire, you know, to paper validation of who we are. Paper validation.
Explain that, Doc.
Okay, this is I comment. It's like I said, we are the only group of people. We are one of the only groups of people that want our captors, go to our captors for our captors to tell us who we are, the people that conquered us.
Right.
It's like, why would I go to the BIA and have them validate I'm an indigenous person when they came over here and conquered me and did all that kind of stuff? Why do I need their permission for that? This whole artificial world is built on text.
Say that. Text.
This whole we are from the natural world, the natural environment, natural heaven. We live in this artificial world. This artificial world was constructed via text, T-E-X-T, paper, the laws, and stuff like that. That's all paper. It's all artificial. It's built on that. And we keep thinking that there is salvation in text, but there is not. You can't, it's like the analogy I use, you can't use their creation and outdo them or compete with them or win over them. If you're in their environment, it's like the analogy I use. If you have to battle a shark, are you going to battle the shark and you have a choice of where you're going to fight him? Are you going to fight the shark in the ocean or are you going to fight the shark in the desert?
Desert.
The desert.
Right.
We are emotional. We are emotional people, and we can overcome and restore and heal using our emotional power. If you think physical power and physical violence is going to conquer these people that are conquering and destroying and exploiting the earth, there is no way, because their dreams are different. You are not. How many indigenous people, I'm talking all over the world, do you know are dreaming up how to make a new tank or how to make up a new drone? Or how to make up a new weapon of mass destruction, or how to make up, you know, a new nuclear bomb.
How to kill like something. So it's just
we don't dream like that.
Yeah, it's like they're in death mode all the time.
That's why physical violence. And see, we had a choice. They came with physical violence, and maybe it was because of the frequencies that Mama Earth was putting out then. we didn't have the experience. You know, we abandoned our emotional power and we tried to use physical power and try to beat them with that. But again, it was like we jumped into their ocean and started fighting them in their ocean, and there was just no way. You ain't going to beat them at physical violence because they're willing to do something that we're not willing to do. They are willing to destroy Mama Earth.
Right.
To defeat us. And we just ain't going to do that. We just can't. Why would we blow up the whole planet to beat somebody?
So, Doctor, how do we begin to checkmate that? How do we begin to, if we know this is happening?
Now we get into the 7 steps, all right?
Okay, before we get into the 7 steps, any callers, if any callers have any question, Doc, you can take some questions right now?
Certainly, brother.
Come on, callers, get his brother some callers. He laid it down. Let me say this before I go on. Brother, the story about Mama Earth and her children, see that those are, when you say write our own story, see that should be our Bible. You know, a book or a set of instructions written around a story like that, because like you say, it connects us back to the earth. So I mean, it was really nice. I appreciate it. Caller, go ahead.
Yeah, when should we be expecting the cartoon Mumbo Jumbo? Because I've seen a couple of the episodes and everything.
Right now, I have one ebook available on iTunes or Amazon. It's called Dr. Mumbo Jumbo in Time, and it's basically a story about surviving depression, emotional pressure that makes you feel like you can't even survive in this system. So it's a story about overcoming that. And it's a story about, that's the one ebook I have out right now. I have other ebooks that are in the works. But, you know, honestly, that's why I was so excited about being on this show. Because honestly, you know, where I live, a lot of people just ain't interested.
Do you mind telling the callers where you live, Doc?
I live in Minnesota.
Up there with Prince.
Minnesota. I live in Minnesota. So you know what? As I got somebody interested, that's going to help motivate me to get more of these stories done. Yes, sir.
You said Minnesota?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you ever heard of these people called the Atagami?
The who?
Atagami. They're indigenous tribes, brothers.
Ostagamis in the Minnesota area?
Like, you ever heard of a book called The Travel Through the Interior Parts of North America by Jonathan Covers?
No, sir. No, sir.
Yeah, he wrote about, there's a painting out there of indigenous people. It's like a mother, a father, and a son. You've probably seen it, but those are the people I think was in Minnesota, that area and everything.
Oh, you're talking about in the past. I thought you were talking about current people.
No, yeah, in the past.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I thought you were talking about current groups of indigenous brothers running around here. Because like how many other indigenous brothers I know in Minnesota?
No, it's the past. Okay. I remember from the book they said the people was in Minnesota, and I was like, I always thought we was in the South, but it was a lot of brothers. No.
Have you ever heard of the Nottawessies?
Yeah, they in that book I'm telling you about.
Yeah. So no, we copper-colored people were coast to coast, you know, top down to the bottom. You know, we were everywhere. We were everywhere.
And what's funny about that too, Doc, is people lived and adapted to that weather. You know, people living everywhere. It's not, everywhere. Like you said. What about Canada? Because you're up there close to Canada, right?
Oh, plenty of copper-colored brown people, and not just that, just plenty of indigenous people in Canada. And you're right, we're all over. We were all over, and even most quote unquote historical people acknowledge that our people or that group of people sort of predate the modern quote unquote Native American, those civilizations. Like even here in St. Paul. We have some mounds over in St. Paul, and they call them I think it's a Hopewell. They call them the Hopewell Mounds. Of course, this white dude named the mounds Hopewell. But everybody acknowledges and accepts that was the group of people that lived in this area, mound builders, before the Lakota and the Dakota people lived here.
Right.
So we were everywhere. So yeah, we were everywhere, and the thing is that, and again, but that's one of the reasons I write stories, because unlike, I really appreciate Chief, because he's really a scholar, a genealogist and stuff. I'm a storyteller. So, you know, I try to write stories, and so because what I try to do is avoid the historical debates and stuff like that, because that's that intellectual stuff, and I'm trying to communicate emotional truth, because my people are emotional, and the crisis that we're experiencing is an emotional crisis, and the things that's happening in the habitats are emotional. The plants and animals have emotions too. You know, when I go on my nature walks and stuff like that, you know, I be feeling like, you know, you run into a deer or a turkey, and they be like, "Bro, what's up? What are y'all doing?"
Right.
Right.
They're like, "Bro," when you go, it's like, "Bro, you
Right.
see all these people up in the forest,
Right.
you know, and all these electrical wires. What are y'all doing?" And they're like, y'all better
Right.
get it together before Mama Earth turns it over to the elements. And once she
Right.
turns it over to the elements, it's a wash for all of us.
Yo, Dr. Mumbo Jumbo.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I feel like the people. I'm not talking about the copper-colored people, but the contemporary Indians, or the people they're calling Indians. I don't feel they have the spirituality or the emotion to heal this landmass. I feel that our people have that magic. I feel like it's going to suffer until we, make it happen.
Well, you know, the thing. I lost you. Did he finish his thought?
Yeah, I'm finished.
Well, you know what? They might not have the emotional. They might not have the emotional ability to the degree, the soul power, emotional power that we do. But because of that, they might not be as emotionally devastated as we are, and because of that, they're able to act in some ways while we're still acting paralyzed. I got some friends, there's some native friends like that. They actually built a house on top of a pipeline. They put a tent up and put a porch on a pipeline, trying to stop them from bringing the pipeline through Minnesota down to the Gulf. So they're and it's like the I don't know more people up in Canada. They are actually fighting the tar sands and stuff like that. So they are actually out there in the environment, standing against the people that are doing this and saying, this is not right. This is not right. So they've sort of gotten beyond where we are. So we might have the power, emotionally, things that might have that frequency to do it. But I don't see enough. I don't see a lot of us.
Yeah, the reason I say that is, like, if you ask the African American, like, he doesn't have a home. Like, he doesn't. This place is his home, and then he kind of says he's an African, but he doesn't even look at that place. So he's like a refugee, something like that of that nature.
Yeah, and that's part of the brilliance of that's part of the brilliance. You make him a stranger in a strange land. You make him a stranger in a strange land. But you know what? I think that we're so powerful. If somebody wants to be an African American, I'm cool with them being an African American. I think that if we get enough people who know they are indigenous, enough soul people who know they are indigenous, if we can get them back in the habitats, back in the nature, back focused, where everybody has a personal relationship with Mama Earth, where we're back out there doing, we can still have our different specialties. We can be medicine. We can do this and we can do that. But the thing is, all of us should do the singing, the dancing, and the creative stuff.
Yeah, we need to get
and
back
the
into
story
nature.
Stuff. All of us.
We need to get back into nature. So, yeah, we need to get back into nature. We got a lot of talented people, and we just need to get back into what we was, born to do. We need to get back into nature, jewelry, different stuff. So we just need to connect back and, get in touch with nature and watch less TV and stuff like that.
Area code 256-849-2227. African Americans Ain't African Radio. We're here talking to Dr. Mumbo Jumbo. And Dr. Mumbo Jumbo, before we get into the 7 steps, I want to ask any callers, do you have any questions or any words for the doctor? Okay, Dr. Mumbo Jumbo, tell us what are the 7 steps to surviving the emotional genocide, then go right into it.
All right. The first step is that you have to honor your soul power. You have to honor your soul power. And your soul power is your emotional energy, your force, or your strength. That's that enhanced ability that you have to feel. And you know we all have it. It's like, you know, when you go into a room that's full of our people, you can feel it, as opposed to when you go into a room that's mostly other people. You can feel the difference, right? Everybody can. So we know that we have it, but we don't honor it. We don't respect it. We don't live by it. We don't learn to work with it, to discipline it. We let other people direct how it's used, as opposed to us directing it for how it was intended.
Doctor, could you give us an example of that?
Well, I'll give you a good example. A good example would be, you know, what happened. Let's take the music industry, gospel, hip hop, whatever you want to do. Rather than our musical talent being used to serve us and to serve the habitat, people dangled out money and stuff in front of us, and so a lot of us said, okay, we will sing about what you want to sing about. That's what happened with gangster rap in that period. It's like, if you want a deal, you have to sing about this. You have to sing about violence. But you have to sing about brothers killing violence. We'll give you a deal. If you sing in some other stuff, you ain't going to get no deal. So we let other people use our energy. But you know one other thing? You know what? My brother and I did a piece of CD for my brother back, I don't know, way back in 97. It's called What Kind of Child? It's a great CD. Man, about 3 years ago, I had people from Germany, from France, and from Japan calling me, trying to get the original CDs, hard copies of those. And they were offering me up to $200 for each hard copy. What they have did is that you can go to Japan. They have taken all these independent hip-hop dudes from the 90s. They call it like gangster rap or soul, whatever rap they kind of call it. And they have these websites, and digitally they have every album out there. You can go on this site. You can say, I want the hip-hop from Milwaukee, unreleased artists from New Orleans, from Rochester, New York. And they are all thriving off of our soul energy and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's like a drug to them. But we're not benefiting from it. Did I answer your question, Kerry?
You answered my question. So, Doc, what's number 2?
Okay, so to learn to honor your soul power. Now, let me tell you one thing. I'm going to talk one thing about the purpose of your soul power. The purpose of your soul power is for self-awareness, collective awareness, habitat awareness, earth awareness, solar system awareness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So awareness, emotional awareness, is really the purpose of your soul power. That's the conduit. If you want to connect to the trees and understand what the trees are saying and stuff like that, that's going to be an emotional discussion. It's not going to be an intellectual discussion with vocabulary. It's a different frequency. It's not an alpha wave thing. It's a beta wave thing. So it's that awareness. Okay.
So Doc, let me, because I hear what you're saying, but I think a lot of times if the listeners can interact, if you're explaining something to us and we can go ahead and do it. Could you explain it like that? Like when you said alpha wave and beta wave, give us an example of the two. What state are you in an alpha wave, and what state are you in a beta wave?
Okay. When you're debating stuff and when you're talking, you have two. I don't want to get too technical, but everybody knows you have a neocortex part of your brain, then you have a limbic system. The neocortex is where your rational, your logic, and your vocabulary reside. Your emotion and your decision-making reside in the limbic part of your brain, right? So a lot of times in this Western society, we are taught to value the neocortex and the intellectual side, the vocabulary side, and stuff like that. And we are taught to diminish the intuitive side and the emotional side and suppress it. We don't get rewarded financially for that. And so that's what I talk about. So, but all of the rest of nature and stuff like that, they operate on that limbic, emotional wavelength. So I'll tell you a difference you can do. It's like when you're all agitated and you're all doing stuff and you're all thinking and you're stressed out and stuff like that, that's all in that frontal part, the neocortex part of your brain. And you're putting off waves of energy. And those waves of energy is uncomfortable to everything that's in harmony with the nature frequency. That's why, you ever wonder why a lot of y'all feel uncomfortable in queues when y'all at work? Because you got a lot of that alpha energy, that competitive stress thing going on. It's not a natural environment. It's a different frequency.
And what
so
about
even if you start...
And what about being up under that artificial fluorescent light? What is that doing?
It's just the whole environment. And I know
Yes.
we got to do what we got to do until we learn how to sustain ourselves and do other stuff. But the whole environment it's just a toxic environment.
It's not conducive to life at all.
It's really not. It's really not. So if you want to try some stuff and experiment some stuff, go out and spend some time in nature, walk around. But then I'm gonna suggest that you find a nice spot that you go to. It can be in your backyard, but go to a place where you just sit. You just sit, and then you look at stuff. You look at the birds, look at the ants, look at the plants until you can start noticing them individually. So it's just not a mass of green. So it's just not all the same type of bird. So you notice the difference of the trees. You notice how the trees are different in the season. And if you do that, and you're away from the city and away from some of them wires, then that neocortex will start to settle down a little bit, and you'll start to pick up that sort of like that, that frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's sort of like a rush. It's like a cool, a wash of water, like a waterfall, just a cool breeze that just comes over. And then you start getting into that theta, that other frequency, and then you can start to look at things differently, and then you can also start to be recharged. Okay. And other ways you can build up that soul power is by committing to storytelling, music, dancing, artwork, and all that stuff yourself. And be humble, too. When you go out in nature, you need to be humble, because we are part of the earth, we are part of the habitat, and everything in life has just as much right to live as we do. And this earth is not here just for us. We're just one life system on the earth. And we're not the oldest. We because we think like colonial people, we think just because we're the most destructive, we think we're the most advanced.
Right.
But destructiveness is not equal to advancement or evolution. What do you want to say? Just because you're the most destructive doesn't mean you're the smartest or the most valuable. It just means you're the most destructive.
Yes.
The other thing, I'm going to tell you one other thing about the power of our soul power, which is what I definitely want people to do with your storytelling. One of the things the ancestors taught me, because when I was talking to them about, I lost my language, my vocabulary, and I want to write stuff sometimes, but I know I don't, so I'll struggle with some Chickasaw or Chata or Choctaw or something like that. I'll talk to other people, I look at them out and stuff like that. But, as I was writing these stories, they said, look, you might have lost the vocabulary. You might have lost the syntax, but you have not lost the meaning of our language. The meaning is in your earth, your body. That meaning has been passed down to you. That's why I came up with the word Naturia. So I said, whatever this island that we live on was called, and we can debate that name and who came up with it, but they said the meaning of it was Naturia, because it was a place that was inseparable and in harmony with Mama Earth's nature, and we were Naturians. So whether you call yourself Choctaw, Chickasaw, whatever, what we are naturians. We are inseparable from nature, indistinguishable.
Yes, Doc, that puts a whole new spin on it. That's a definitely connector, you know. That's a definite connector to the earth. Because I think what's going on in the community, the cities have basically ran out of options. You know, they're toxic as I don't know what. So I think nature's the only place to go.
But let me tell you. Let me finish that one thing about language, and then I'm going to address that point. I forget. Bring it back to it. Language. We have the ability. This is the marvelous things about our soul power. We can take a language like English that doesn't have the energy that we want it to have, and we can come up with a slang or a phrase that has the same meaning of indigenous words that we don't even know anymore. Like, don't sleep on this, or something like that. And all that slang we come up with, that's just us forcing English language to contain the meaning of words the way we used to communicate, the way our vibration is. So we haven't really lost language, but that's another illusion that they do to use to stop us. Just think of how many of our terms, once we say them, they're so emotionally charged, it's like the rest of the media and the rest of the culture can't wait to adopt them and pull them on. I hear dudes on talk radio, conservative talk radio, oh, don't sleep on that.
Right. Right.
They can't wait to, and you know, remember all the movies in the 80s where all the other people would feel cool when they did a slang word, what's up, brother? You know, when they talk like us, they feel all special. Because they feel the soul. They feel that word or this term that we've injected our soul power into and changed the meaning of. And that's attractive to them. So, I was going to say something else. What did you say about that? It was after the, anyway, I forgot what I was going to say.
Anyway, let's go on to number 2.
Number 2, honor your personal earth. And this is what it was, your earth. When we talk about these cities are toxic and getting back to nature, the first, one of the most important things you have to accept is that your body is the earth. We're always talking about we lost our earth. Now, how are you going to lose your earth when you're walking around in earth? We are all clothed with Mama Earth's clay. We are all filled with Mama Earth's water. We are all breathing Mama Earth's air, her breath. We are still that habitat. We might not be acting like it, but we are still there. And even in these cities, because we are there, nature is still there. We still have a place to put down and establish and grow from there if we get on the right vibration. Now, it's harder, but if we come together, we can do it. It's much easier. I mean, but again, you know, we do what we have to do until we can do it. This is a transition. We're on. This is not a quick journey. This is a transition.
Yes.
But the more of us that get out of the cities, back into nature, or we create sustainable life or eco-villages, as one of my friends say, in the city, will be good for that. So there are basically 4 rituals when you honor your earth. That every biological life form, whether you're air creation or a water creation, you have these 4 rituals that we all participate in with Mama Earth and Daddy Sunshine. The first one is breathing. The second one is drinking. The third one is eating. And the fourth one is moving. And these are all rituals that we participate in every day. And when you honor your personal earth, you do these rituals with humbleness and with gratitude. Because you realize that you are part of something. You're part, literally, of the Mama Earth's body. So at some point, you need to take some time during the day and appreciate the miracle of air breathing, your body taking that energy in and expelling it. Because that's the same thing the trees do. That's the same thing the insects do, the birds, and everything else does. That's something that everybody does. And as human beings, we add mumbo jumbo because of our ego. and we add a lot of other stuff. But when you get down to the basic earthling, the rituals of earthlings, those are the four. And it's the same thing with drinking, the hydration. You know, and water is one of the most beautiful creations and elements. Because if you notice, water changes forms so effortlessly and just so gracefully. Like when water is in the form of mist in a cloud, it's not worrying about how long it's going to be mist in a cloud. Once it becomes liquid and water and it starts falling, it's happy to be a raindrop enjoying the fall, or snowflake. And then once it's in the form of ice, it's very happy being ice until it's melt, and then it goes back up in mist again. We can learn a lot once we start communicating with nature. You can learn a lot from the tree people. They're patient. They are one of the most patient group of land creatures there are, and one of the most giving. They protect every life in the forest, and we could not live without them. And then the eating. We just do all these things so without any respect. And the thing is, before we go back into our natural habitat and environment, we can't go back in there with this alpha wave colonial mindset. We can't go in there disrespectful, disrupting everything that's in the nature, in the forest. You know, we have to go in there with some humility, especially because we've been out of it for so long. Now, the thing about eating is that the most important thing about eating as a ritual is that we are food. Everything is food. We are food too. So we can't act like everything is just food for us and we aren't food for anything. And the natural life cycle, Daddy Sunshine sends his sun energy into the earth, impregnates the earth, causes plants to extract minerals and grow, and then different animals eat the plant. But all of that life on Earth comes from Daddy Sunshine's energy impregnating Mama Earth. And then a plant comes up, and then everything eats a plant, or something that eats a plant. And then everything that eats that, so it's like this cascade of energy from the sun that gets transferred to a plant. The plant enjoys energy. Then it transfers that energy to an animal. The animal enjoys that energy. Then it transfers it to another animal. Then we eat it. Then it transfers it to decomposers. Then the decomposers come, and they decompose the body, and those minerals go back down so that when Daddy Sunshine hits again, those minerals are available there to create a new plant. It's the cycle of life.
So us being cut off from that completely, that's my contention to that's what the problem is.
That's a huge part of the problem because we're disconnected, we're arrogant, we think we're men, whatever that concept is. We're just so cut off from nature, and that's why if we go back to nature with this mindset, we are dangerous. We ain't gonna be helping nature.
Let me ask you this. Earlier, you said that when we go into nature, we go in there with this ego and attitude, and you said that we look at other species as food, but we're food too. Who are we food for?
Have you ever been bitten by a mosquito?
Yes.
You're food.
Yeah. Check.
That's right.
You food for
mosquitoes in Birmingham.
Yeah.
There go mosquitoes in Birmingham.
One or two.
But that's an honor. That's
right.
an honor.
Yes.
That's because we're earthlings.
Right. Let's take the mosquitoes, and when we talk about nature and getting our folks seeing that you got to be a partner with this earth.
Well,
us being scared, us being fearful of it, we have an aversion to anything natural.
That's why I say the brothers have to go out there and make it safe and make it more pleasant to ease
You're right.
into it. We do. Right. We just do. Now let me tell you something else. Let me say something about that. One thing I'm gonna say about food. And even though I might sound like I'm against I'm not a pacifist, right? I understand violence. Life is violent. Life is a violent activity. As a matter of fact, life is only sustained by death. Did you hear me?
Could you explain?
The only way for you to live is some other life form has to die. But that's why when you eat food, you do it with thanksgiving, gratefulness, and honor, knowing that you're going to be food one day, too, for something else. Everything you consume has to die. That plant, that egg, wants to live just as much as you do. That's why you can't be wasteful. That's why it's disrespectful to nature and as our heritage to be wasteful and to take more than we need. Because we know, too, that we are going to be food one day. And that's a sacred thing. That's a sacred ritual. That's one of the 4 sacred rituals. So, yeah, we're sustained by life. So there is an inherent violentness to life. So that doesn't mean that if a mosquito is trying to feed on you, that you ain't got a right to stop him, because if you don't want to get a disease or something like that. But there are things that you can do. There are plants that you can do and things that you can put on that would make them not do that.
Right.
Just take some wisdom and some things. There are plants and stuff you can rub on yourself and learn that so that you can go out there and learn how to interact with them. So they don't expect you not to be violent. They know that they're food. They know that you're food. You know, they're just like, take what you need to survive. We understand that's how life is, but don't wipe us all out. Why are you just going to create a big wasteland and upset the whole ecosystem, the whole habitat?
Right.
So we got to get out there. And actually, I'm working on it with my friend, my indigenous brother up here, Urban Abo. We were talking last night, and we're going to try to come up with some, he has some good stuff on foraging. And so we're going to try to come up this summer with some videos on foraging. And he has a really good outline, so we're going to work together and build some videos on foraging. And start with 5 basic plants and stuff like that to try to have something by the end of the season that people can have access to.
So foraging is just going out, getting edibles that we would just otherwise walk over or walk away from.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so breathing.
Yes. Breathing, drinking, eating, and moving. And moving / rest. I mean, you got to move.
Right.
You have to move. If you are living, your body is built for movement. So if you're just sedentary all of the time, you are working against your emotional energy.
Yes.
Your emotional energy isn't built for being sedentary. So you have to move. That's just part of it. And if you are following your emotional energy, you will be moving, because Mama Earth's emotions are always moving. You know, you're not a rock. She's going to have you move. Okay,
so how did all those people? So how did all those people survive on those ships without moving? That came over here from Africa.
You know what? That's another story that somebody else made up. So you have to ask them how that worked. I didn't write that story. You have to write that story. I didn't write that story, so you have to ask them how that story worked, how that worked. But it worked. It worked in their story. That's all I can say. It worked in their mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, it did.
There it is. So step 3 is honor your ancestors, and I think on this show we've talked a lot about that. The only thing I would say is that, like she said, you build an altar for them, you talk with them, you sing with them, you also dance with them, and you also listen to them. And that includes your living ancestors and also, like Rick said, talk to your ancestors, your elders, but also your ancestors that have transitioned on. So you have to, the thing is, we are a habitat, but we are a habitat that expands through time. And the forest that you see today is just part of the forest that you can't see. You know, it's still part of the forest that used to exist. It still has the seeds and the material for the forest that's going to exist in the future. It's still all one.
Yes.
So we've talked enough about honoring your ancestors, so I'm not going to talk a lot about that. So I will talk about step 4, is honoring your current and ancestral habitats. And that's kind of the thing I talked about. And that is the nature walks. You have to spend some time out in nature. You need to get to know your local habitat. Especially if you talk about go to nature somewhere, you need to learn the nature where you're at first. Find out a few different trees, a few different plants. Get to know the birds in your neighborhood. Get to know a squirrel in your neighborhood. You'll be surprised the interaction you'll get once you get to know them and you start interacting with them.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
Dr. Mumbo Jumbo, when you mean interact, could you explain that in case people don't understand that? What you mean by interacting with the animals?
Interact means that you give them your attention. You give them your emotion. If you sit still and you see a bird or a squirrel and they see you sitting there and they see you there calm, they'll look at you and they'll give you their attention. And they'll be trying to communicate with you. And they will actually just stare at you. And they will be they're trying to find your frequency. They're trying to find your frequency. Because they're used. They still have their memory of us communicating with them emotionally all the time. They still have that memory. We've forgotten it. We've forgotten it as people, but the rest of the habitat hasn't forgotten it. It's like you have this engine, and then one of the parts on the inside is no longer functioning. They're all waiting for this part to start functioning again so they can get back to optimum performance. So they're literally waiting for that. And if you'll be surprised. Put up a birdhouse. Feed some birds. Don't feed them nothing toxic, though. Come on, don't feed them nothing toxic.
Yeah.
Find out something healthy and feed to them, and you'll be surprised. They'll get to know you. They'll start hanging around you. Especially if you're not afraid of them. Most of the time, the things that drive the animals away is your fear. And then your loud talking, and just not even your loud talking, it's just your loud thinking. You're thinking about this, you're thinking about that. They're like, oh, wow. They run from that. So nature walks, getting to know your local habitat. I mean, to the point where, there are resources. This don't have to all be about copper people. If they're a national park doing training on hikes or training on foraging or training on that, go learn that stuff. Go learn that stuff. Because even if it's not your ancestral habitat, when you go down there, you are going to learn stuff to transfer, but the most thing you're going to be able to transfer is the emotional experience. So that you will be more emotionally prepared if you do go back to where your ancestors are from. And the other part of that, honoring your ancestral habitats, is you do need to connect with the earth of your birth. And I'm not saying that you have to live there or go there, but if you can visit there or if you can get closer to that, that's good. But the most important thing is that you have to emotionally connect with there. Because
now, why is that, Doc?
Because of the vibration. Because when you are with the frequency change that Mama Earth has made, everybody can feel it. Everybody who's open to it can feel it. If you have problems feeling it, then I would suggest if you go back to your ancestral homeland, where the frequency that's in your personal Earth, which is your body, gets around the exact same frequency of a bandwidth that's where your ancestors were from, it's going to be much easier for you to feel it. And you feeling it is going to help you heal more emotionally. And if you heal more emotionally individually, that's going to help us all heal more collectively. And we have a responsibility as individuals to emotionally heal so that we can and have our own personal relationship with Mama Earth, so that when we try to connect collectively, just like you see the geese flying south and they take turns, one's in the lead, and they take turns, So it's not a huge burden on any one bird to have to fly the lead and break the wind the whole way down south. We all have to be prepared to do that.
Yes.
And we all have unique gifts to do it in different ways. We all don't have to do it the same way. Okay, that's the earth of your birth. The fifth thing is you have to rediscover your heritage and culture. You have to find people with similar backgrounds. You have to accept the fact that you can't do it alone. You just can't do it alone. You can't do it alone. I don't know how many of y'all tried to do it alone, but you can't do it alone. That's why everybody's on this call, because you realize you can't do it alone. And at the state that we're in, don't expect perfection from your brothers and sisters. We are all experimenting. We are all responding to Mama Earth's frequency change in our own way. Some of us might get caught up in other mumbo-jumbo that's not focused on the habitat and healing the habitat. We might get focused on other things. We might get caught up in different belief plantations. So when people are caught up in that, we have to try not to condemn them, but we have to try to help them if we can and pull them out. Because we're all reacting to fear, trying to get on this fear vibration that this culture is based on, trying to get back to a love vibration. You know? And so you have to find other indigenous groups or people that are like-minded. And then the other thing is, too, we have to make peace, we have to make peace. The thing is, we have to make peace with as many groups of people as we can. Because as long as people can provoke us and make us angry, they can control us. And again, they can put us on their vibration. And once we get on their vibration, you go into nature being angry and mad. Ain't no plant and animal want to deal with you if you're angry and mad. They're like, what? What? Can you go back to the city with that stuff? Don't we have enough stress here without you bringing some more stress here?
Humble yourself.
Really is. And the way I look at some of our Euro natives and stuff like that, that some of them look at me funny when I be wearing my little stuff around and stuff like that. But I'm thankful that our ancestors had the foresight. They knew that we would not be able to retain our culture because of the color of our skin and because of the things that were going on. And some of our teaching and some of our even our spirituality and some of our techniques and things like that. But they made sure that enough of their blood was in European people so that by the time their future descendants woke up, that information would still be available. So I don't resent them. I'm thankful that they're able to hold stuff that 1/256 of indigenous copper that they had was enough to hold all that other information and stuff so that now our generations have it available and we can learn from it with respect and humble. So I look at all that stuff as gifts from our ancestors that they were able to figure a way when it literally looked like there was no way and that we were going to be just totally wiped up and annihilated and just totally Europeanized. They found a way to hold some stuff back for us.
Yes.
So again, it's learning to walk in that love vibration, and I don't mean passive at all. I'm talking about that powerful love emotion. That can actually stop the physical violence before it comes because you can control the emotions of everybody in your space and eventually everybody in your forest, in your habitat, collectively when you have enough people. We've all been in the presence of a matriarch in our family, right?
Yes.
Somebody who had such emotional peace and calmness when everybody was around her, everybody was at peace, right?
Right.
Y'all all have some grandmother or some aunt like that, right? Y'all been around somebody like that, hopefully.
Yes.
Hopefully y'all have. And that's
yes.
what we got. And that's what we have to start getting our sisters to start raising those types of sisters again. Because that's what we need to start creating these emotional havens so that we can start recovering economically and other stuff because we have the emotional stability there. And so, and the other thing is rediscovering your heritage. Wear a T-shirt, wear a headband, wear something. You see all these people from East Africa wearing their stuff and their little round hats and stuff like that, walking around on our earth, or, earth of our ancestral homeland, walking around with all of their clothes, proclaiming their heritage, honoring their ancestors.
And we won't honor ours.
No, that's disrespectful to our ancestors. That's disrespectful. And the thing is, we can make up stuff. We can just make up stuff. We still have their energy in us. Ask them, what do you want me to make up? I got some great T-shirts and stuff like that. You can make it up. So we can do that. That's we have that creative power to do that, but we must honor them. And that's the other thing. It's like she said. To be a Native American, quote-unquote Indian, you just have to be known as one. Everybody in Minnesota that know me know I'm an indigenous brother. They know me. They might think I'm crazy, but they know me. They always know I'm going to be on some indigenous stuff. They say, oh, that's brother, Doc, he on that stuff. Okay, cool, I'm on that stuff. But at least they recognize me as that.
Right.
They
know. So what is okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead with the sixth one.
Two more steps.
Okay.
2 more steps. The sixth step is that you need to join with other people who are already honoring or protecting nature. That's very important. Doesn't matter what color they are. If they are honoring the habitat, if they are trying to protect the earth, protect the water, if they are against pesticides, if they are against polluting oil and stuff like that, you need to join with them. You need to honor, we need to get over our hurt. Get over our hurt and realize that our habitat is bigger than our personal grievances. The crisis that our habitat is in must become more important than us being personally offended that we are being genocided. I'm sorry, but that's what time it is.
Say that one more time, Doc. Say that one more time, Doc.
Okay. The crisis that our habitat is in has to take precedence over our personal offenses, being personally offended that we've been genocided or that we're being genocided.
Wow.
We have to be able to get over it. We have to stop identifying ourselves as another human community, another group of just people fighting for U.S. rights and privileges.
So what should that shift be, Doc? Well, so what should that shift be? Shifting to that civil rights, what you just brought up, shifting that to what?
We need to shift from civil rights to shift to habitat rights. We need to be more concerned about protecting habitats than we are if Sally gets to vote in something, or right. We need to be more concerned about the habitat, because the habitat is what's going to sustain us. Hey, there's no civil group, there's no political group, there's no recognition from a conquering government that is going to preserve your people. They might preserve your people on a piece of paper, like they did with the Indigenous Rights Declaration that the UN did a few years ago that Obama signed. They might recognize you on a piece of paper, but that doesn't mean anything. They're still going to be killing you and your habitat.
Right.
So this concept of paper salvation, this concept that we want equal rights with other groups of people, is we have to get over that. The thing is, if we want to claim that we are indigenous Americans, then we need to start acting like this is our home and start taking responsibility for our home.
That's right. That's right.
And we have to get over all the offenses that were done for us, been done to us. We got to get over that. If we're not mature enough to do that, then what's the point in being indigenous? Just so we can complain to other people that we're indigenous?
Right.
And we're acting like babies? You're indigenous, so what's the point of you being indigenous? What are you going to do? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to restore our soul power, and we're going to restore our habitat, and we're going to heal our habitat. And we're going to change the emotional frequency of this island that we live on so much that you are going to you're either going to change your ways or you're going to want to leave of your own volition. Because we're going to change the frequency that much.
Well, I'm down for that
Because that's what we do.
Yes, yes.
But the point we have to learn some practical skills of how to protect nature. And we should be at the forefront of that. You know, we just need to be at the forefront of that. And then the last thing, the seventh step, is the basic of my mumbo jumbo, is that we need to share love with everybody, especially the habitat. So one of my little mumbo jumbo saying is, I don't care what you say you believe. All I care about is how you share love with the habitat on a daily basis. I really don't care what you say you believe. Because what you say you believe doesn't really impact me. Your interaction with the habitat is what impacts me and my future and the future of my people. So, the 4 ways you share love. Any place that you see love isn't growing, you plant it. Any place you see love is broken, you mend it. Anybody that's in need of receiving it, you give it. When you're in need of it, you receive it.
One more time, Doc. One more time, Doc.
All right. The 4 ways you share love. You plant, you mend, you give, and you receive. If you're in any situation, in your family, at work, or something like that, and you see that there isn't a love vibration there, you plant it, you create it. You sow the seeds. If you're in a situation where you see love is broken, where you see fellowship is broken, especially if it's among indigenous people who are arguing over ideology, or if it's indigenous people that somebody's offended somebody, take some tobacco. You know that in our culture, you take a tobacco offering to somebody as a peace offering, they will accept you. And you can sit down and talk about your situation and try to resolve it. So you don't let the conquerors continue to divide and conquer us. You know we all are under the same pressure. You know? So you mend that love every opportunity you have, because that's going to strengthen us and strengthen the habitat. And then when you have more love than you need, you make sure you give it away, especially to children. You need to give much love as possible to children. Every opportunity you have, you need to be telling our soul children that you got soul power. And because you have soul power, you are going to make it. We are going to make it. Because of the soul power you have is more potent than the soul power my generation has. Because Mama Earth has given you more because you need to do more. You need to sow that soul power and believe in them. You might not have economic power, you might not have this power, you might not have that, but the power you have is going to change the face of the earth. And we need to create songs and stories and school and stuff to enforce that, reinforce that in them. And then the second thing, if you're really planting, mending, and giving love, it's going to be flowing through your life so much that you need to take time to receive it, too. And you receive it from nature. You receive it from our brothers and sisters. And that, my brothers and sisters, are the 7 steps.
Area code 256-849-2227. African American Ain't African Radio. Dr. Mumbo Jumbo just laid down the 7 steps to heal the emotional genocide. Doc, what are some of the things that we can do in the communities around the city for the people listening? I hear what you're saying about plant, mend, give, receive. What are some of the other things that we can start doing to make an impact as we go out into our communities?
Well, I think the most important thing you can do, if you're not growing your own food, find somebody that's growing food that you can at least plant some food in, or you can grow some food in your apartment. You know, you need to start having that relationship again with food, as food. So one of the most important things you can do is and growing food will sort of help you get out of this Western colonial mindset that everything just exists for the human ego. So you grow some food, right? You start growing some food. The other thing is, if there are groups of people, the other thing is you just have to talk. You have to talk. When you're around other groups of people, if somebody, I'm not saying you be belligerent, somebody calls you African American, somebody calls you black, you need to start clarifying who you are. You know, because the more you put that energy out, the more it's going to be strengthened in you, and the more solidified it's going to be in you. If you are fortunate enough to live in a place where there's more than one of you, then you need to get together, meditate, dance, sing, get in nature with whoever that person is at least a couple times a week. And if you do that, the vibration that you'll create will start adding people to that.
Cool. Dr. Mumbo Jumbo, could you give the listeners your email, your phone number, your text number, however they could contact you? Because I know some of the listeners are going to have some questions. So could you give out your email address, website, all of that to the listeners, please?
Sure. You can contact me via email at drmumbojumbo@gmail.com. You can also connect to my YouTube channel, Dr. Mumbo Jumbo. You can also get my blog at wordpress.drmumbojumbo. You can get me on Facebook at Dr. Mumbo Space Jumbo. You can check out my ebook, Dr. Mumbo Jumbo in Time, as a Facebook page, Dr. Mumbo Jumbo in Time. And my website, I'm working on my website. So my website will be up in a few months, and I'm going to actually have some Soul People music. I'm working on a project called Soul People Project, which will have some music to kind of reinforce some of this stuff a lot of this stuff that we're talking about. And actually, I had one song I wanted to try to have ready for today, and we had some technical difficulties, and I didn't get it mixed anyway. But it's and I'm gonna just give you the first verse of this song so you know what I'm talking about. It's called "Already Home," and it's appropriate for the Christian topic. And the lyrics are, "Been hoping you would find a brighter day in a heavenly land so far away. But what if this was it and we had to stay? What if we were already home? Would we stop loving death and cherish life? Destroy mass weapons, choose peace over strife. Begin to treat our neighbors right if we were already home. 12 pearly gates, streets of gold, tricked out mansions, Cadillacs and rolls. 70-something virgins on the stroll, unless we're already home. Paradise lost in the by and by. No hope this life, no reason to try. Unless, of course, you don't believe the hype and we're already home." So it's going to be kind of music like that. There's a lot of music talking about the Americans too.
Okay, any callers? Do you have any questions or anything you want to add to the conversation with Dr. Mumbo Jumbo this evening? Rick, what about you?
I just want to say I just really enjoyed having Dr. Mumbo Jumbo on the show. He really made me aware of a couple of things that I hadn't been doing myself. So I